Most of us going through a spiritual awakening can become overwhelmed by the totality of our task, or we might get lost in even what exactly the endgame to awakening is. So today, Christina von Dreien is going to be breaking down the endgame. While we begin to expand our consciousness more, we start to see that awakening itself is an ever-unfolding journey. So if it's an ever-unfolding journey, then what would the endgame be, and how much responsibility is it for us to awaken? And where do we go with that? So it's really important for us to understand our position in the cosmos, for us to begin to start having the clarity we need to know what our role is. Because when we know our position, then we can know our role inside this whole journey. And what that would be is to look at us as though we are the boots on the ground, units of our higher self, and that even our higher self has a larger aspect of itself. So our higher self even has a higher self, and what our higher self's higher self is our oversoul. From our oversoul we have a higher self that we are the representative of at this level of reality. So we are the travelling soul that is currently here in the third dimension, where there is maximum fragmentation. In the third dimension, light vibrates so slow that we experience ourselves as separate from our reality, because the third dimension is maximum fragmentation and maximum separation. And we become more aware, we begin to receive more spirit and more essence from our higher self. This is the point to a spiritual awakening. It is to expand our consciousness wide enough to begin to merge with the higher self. The point to a spiritual awakening is to unite soul with spirit. Another way of saying this is, a spiritual awakening journey is the journey to expand consciousness that will allow us to receive more of our higher self's essence that cannot normally fit inside the third dimension because of how slow and condensed light vibrates here. So we're the most compact, compressed fractal of the oversoul that has just individual extensions of consciousness, or of a soul unit. And within that, we can look at that like, as I said, boots on the ground where the physical individuated expression. And that's very important to know that that's our position in relationship to the higher self, which is our more multidimensional aspect. So the higher self is the more multidimensional aspect, and then you have the oversoul. And it's very important to know that fractal position, because nothing else when it comes to an endgame is going to make sense unless we understand that fractal expression. The fractal expression goes the oversoul, the higher self, and then you start getting individual souls. And if we want to get really technical, the higher self would be the personal Akashic records, the personal Akashic library of one soul. So if I have a higher self, and I'm the boots on the ground fractal expression of the oversoul and of the higher self, then my higher self would be my own personal journeys, Akashic records and Akashic library, just for all of the experiences that is being expressed right now through my individual soul stream. And so everyone has their higher self that has their own personal Akashic library and Akashic records for each of their own multidimensional journey. And so when it comes to back again, we're awakening. We're starting to expand our consciousness. We're starting to realise that we are more than just our own personal avatar, and that we are more than just our own personal name and our own individual ego. How much of the capacity for even more awakening am I responsible for? And what the heck do I do with all of this moving out of this reality once it's my time to cross over? So what's very important to know right now is that when we are engaging in any form of awareness, any sort of expanding our own consciousness, becoming more aware of our reality, both the negative aspects and the positive aspects, understanding the nuances, strengthening our discernment, doing inner work, becoming more emotionally intelligent, all of these things contribute to what's called integration. Essentially, all the integration we're doing is akin to being a magnet. All of that healing work, all the different ways that we integrate, is like a magnet that starts calling forth to us all the different pieces of our own individual consciousness that are here in the third dimension. Anything that we are unaware of, we technically aren't responsible for, as long as we are sincere and doing the best we can in our healing journey. We don't need to be hyper-vigilantly aware of every single thing we need to salvage, reclaim, or become aware of in order to integrate. The universe orchestrates situations where whatever we're feeling or becoming aware of acts like a magnet, drawing everything into our experience. Similar to the law of attraction, we are magnets, attracting what aligns with us. What's being drawn to us will ultimately help us embody our higher self, as our higher self seeks embodiment. And so we can look at this like a separate entity, but then we will get really confused about it. Just imagine that your embodiment of your higher self this lifetime isn't an entity trying to get through to you and use your vessel. Instead, it's your highest version of yourself. So your higher self is not embodied. It is the pure potential. It has so much wisdom. It's very full. It's very whole. That's where the term holy comes from. It's like no higher density beings that are of a positive orientation or even a beneficial orientation are. Half. That's why they're called holy. Okay, so when we have these higher expressions of self that are wanting to be embodied, it's really for our own benefit, and it's for our own journey. If a person is afraid of embodiment, then it's simply not for them. Because when a person truly wants to awaken and heal and be their best version and has that amount of self-love, it's no longer a fearful concept. That's not even the reality in which all of this is perceived. So here's the good news. If you don't want to embody your higher self, you're not close to it, and you don't have to worry about it. But if a person does want to expand enough into their awakening, and they're confused about what exactly they're expanding into and what the endgame is, there are two possibilities. The higher self desires embodiment, which aligns with the soul's growth and evolution, because at that point, there's no conflict of wills. The willpower of us and our individual ego and the willpower of the higher self don't have separate wills. They have aligned. So it's not about surrendering our willpower to a higher willpower, or one willpower overpowering the other. Those happen at earlier stages of awakening, but by the time somebody truly wants to understand what their role is and what their position is in evolution and awakening, that has already been reconciled, and there's no longer a battle or a clash of wills. So at this point what we wants us. If we want to embody our higher self gave us that wish, gave us that intention. There's just beautiful synchronicity, because the higher order of this universe is synchronicity. If we're in alignment with something, like wanting to evolve and embody our higher self, and then from there have our higher self's journey unfold into a larger one, then we're not being used. That's just an alignment of wills. And that's how the universe truly operates. The endgame to this whole process of spiritual awakening is different for each soul's individual journey. It will depend on what best serves the higher self's intention. Some souls will want to continue transitioning to the fifth density New Earth timeline, where they will. People continue to follow the course of human evolution and the Ascension timeline, while other souls will be shifting their focus away from Gaia's Ascension altogether, so that their higher self can now choose whatever next experiences it would need in order for the higher self to integrate back into the Oversoul. The endgame for the higher self's journey is to ultimately reunite into its higher aspect, the Oversoul, where it makes its way back to the monad. We're in a dimension right now, and a level, a frequency of consciousness right now, where we can perceive and we can act out a whole bunch of different conflicts, simply because we don't have this higher capacity for consciousness. Because once you have a higher capacity for consciousness, you can start organising everything into synchronicities, into situations where there's no conflict, involved. So the first sign is that the higher self wants us to get out of separation consciousness, because separation consciousness is what is the fuel. It's the driving force behind war. It's the driving force behind the victim-perpetrator cycle. So we can't embody our higher self if we still believe that we are separate from every other extension of people, our environment, or people even far away from us, in another country who are suffering. None of that can exist in the higher states of consciousness, where a being has that level of perception, that level of awareness, and responsibility to be able to understand that they are the world. The world is themselves. And so with that, now we start beginning the deeper inner work. So everyone has their own journey. Everybody has their own methods and modalities and techniques for healing. So this isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. There are stronger things and there are stronger ways we can heal than others. So I'm not saying all of them are exactly equal, but for the most part, we all have our own individual journeys when it comes to being the magnet that is calling forth all of the different aspects of ourself that we are unaware of or that need the light of our love. So there are aspects of us we're not aware of that are calling forth the light of our love, and our love is our awareness. So they want the light of our awareness. They want the light of our love. They want to get into our love. That's what we're magnetizing. That's why we get things that we want if it's in alignment already with our higher self's intention, which is to be embodied, which is for us to be the embodiment of the higher self. And so, even when we're manifesting, if a manifestation isn't in alignment with this higher intention, then it might not be attracted into what we're magnetizing. Our higher self is pulling a stronger magnet for the things in our experience that will attract us to be a more mature version of consciousness, to be more responsible, powerful, loving, and open. It's about the full merger of the higher intellect of awareness with the open and awakened heart center in physical form. So the physical expression, the physical reality, is where embodiment happens because it's the earth element. So this is the stage of our own evolution and of our higher self and our oversoul's own evolution. It all is interdependent and interconnected with us, the boots on the ground, because we're in what's called an alchemy salt. We're in the physical expression, we're an earth element. So we're the one that crystallizes, we make it real. That's what crystallization means. It's to physically organize something. So we're in the earth element, in the physical expression, because we are here to literally crystallize the higher consciousness and bring it into the physical vessel. So once that happens, that's what we're calling integration. Integration in this lifetime doesn't end, but at the same time there's such a thing as not being neurotic about it. We don't have to actually worry and track and be anxious about exactly how much we consolidated or organized into integration. We do the best that we can, knowing that a part of healing, a true sign of healing and of integrating, is releasing the neurosis and releasing the fear or anxiousness or lower frequency thought and mental chatter that would even make you feel the pressure and the distance and the separation of thinking that you did it wrong. So the paradox is once you're no longer worried about if you integrated enough this lifetime and did it right, but you're still healing and integrating. That's how you would best be able to marker and best be able to gauge how much you've helped your higher self and your higher self has helped you. So with that, I want you to look at everything beyond that point of what I've mentioned about healing and integrating. Now, through the lens of a relay race. So if the endgame in all of this is for us to consolidate and us to integrate enough so that now we have aligned our will with our higher soft's will, become the embodiment of our higher self, thus we have merged. Now consider that merger I'm discussing, where we're embodying our higher self, as akin to a small Russian doll within a larger Russian doll. You know those Russian doll sets, how one is within a larger one, within a larger one, within a larger one. Those are fractals. We're fractals. So our fractal, I call it soul unit, our unit now gets integrated into the larger Russian doll. So now our fractal goes inside the larger fractal. And that would be what our consciousness, what our individual journey is responsible for. So that's our position in the cosmos. We're boots on the ground. And what we're responsible for is doing the inner work this lifetime to the best of our ability, being able to awaken into unity consciousness, and then from there, integrate and stabilize our humanity with our divinity. This isn't about ignoring our humanity in favour for the divinity, and that is probably where people get the most lost in what we're supposed to do this life. And many of us spend the majority of our time after we've gone through a level of awakening into now. How can I get as far away from the parts of me that are not as enlightened as I am now? When in reality, we move into that and we go into integration. The reason why integration is so important is because of this next step to the endgame that I will be covering, and that is when we align with and therefore embody our higher self to the best of our ability. Now, our higher self is going to receive the baton, as if this were all a relay race. So, if we simply focus on what we're responsible for in this lifetime, in our individual journey, in our individual ego, and the stories around us that we have magnetized into our awareness, along with all the different lessons contained within those stories, whether they are helping us or aiding in the dissolution of some pattern, boundary, block or judgment within ourselves, that would be akin to holding a baton and running as fast as we could to give our higher self a really good head start. That's what we're responsible for. We are not responsible for what our higher self's journey has to do from there. Aren't you all relieved? Now the higher self takes the baton from there, and it goes the next leg of the race. It's responsible for that part of the race. A lot of us here going through an awakening are in unnecessary anxiety and overwhelm because they're worried about a job that they don't have to do this lifetime. All we have to do is fulfill our responsibilities here to the best of our ability. Whatever lies beyond this point is not our responsibility. It's not our responsibility to worry about what lies beyond this point. It would be greatly beneficial to shift that worry and anxiety away from what is not our responsibility, and instead focus on enhancing the quality of life and presence in our journey here. We need not concern ourselves with what our higher self has to do from there, because all of us, the oversoul, the higher self and the soul, are simply different points of the present moment. So all three of us are different extensions of one another, and we are all interconnected and interdependent on one another. And if we're interdependent, that means that we don't have to worry about all the other parts of the journey. If we're interdependent, then that means that our higher self and our oversoul really has a strong intention for us that we're responsible for. We could look at it like they're dependent on us for this, which is why they give us a lot of resources energetically to magnetize certain things to us, because we do have a role in this, and there is a level of dependency. But the beauty is, the interdependency means that even though we're responsible for something, we're not responsible for the whole thing. It gives us the opportunity to intensify our level of presence here when we're not worried about the other parts of the journey, that the higher self and the oversoul's responsible for once we pass the baton to the higher self. So knowing that we have one leg of the journey that we're responsible for in this relay race, and knowing that the best we can do to set up our higher self so that the higher self got a clean head start, then the rest is taken care of from there and we don't have to worry about that. And that's when surrender would be a really great idea, and that would also give us the optimal health that we would need in order to see our interconnection and our interdependence on our whole energy field or all the aspects of our consciousness. And so with that, another way of saying all of this, another paradigm we can look at all of this through, is that if you are sincere and you are actively becoming aware of that which you are unaware of, and you are actively being open to that which you need to heal, and that which you need to understand are like overarching themes in life, overarching challenges. If you're doing all of that work with sincerity, then the universe will bestow on you grace. So all of this can also be seen as this. If you are sincere and committed to doing the work, then grace will come in and guide you further. I hope this has provided you with a head start. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening.